Welcome to another day in the Matrix. This is Red Pill Podcast 136. I hope you're all having an amazing weekend out there. Today's podcast will be dedicated to the end of this year since we only have a couple months left, and it's important I share as much as possible to prepare us for these final months ahead. It will be titled The End of the Year of the Rabbit. And I have an absolutely mind-blowing pattern I discovered in the stock market that goes back over 80 years. And I can't wait to reveal it to you today in today's Red Pill podcast. So before we get into everything, make sure you're comfortable, you're relaxed. Again, welcome to Red Pill Podcast 136. Make sure to grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee if it's the morning time, or glass of wine, beer, or any beverage of your choice if it's a little later in the day for you. We have a lot to get into today, so today's podcast is going to provide us with some critical insights into how the rest of this month of November will go and how to position ourselves effectively for this upcoming year of 2024. Before I get into that though, if you are new here to the Wolfpack, welcome. It's so great to have you here with us. Make sure if you want to get access to the Discord server that you send me a direct message over on Patreon with your Discord username and the last four numbers after your username, and I will reply back to you on a Patreon message with the Discord server invite. And make sure to comment below in this podcast what coin you would like to look at in next week's Red Pill. Whatever coins get the most votes from the members, we will review. And this week, we will be covering Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP. As usual, I actually have a really important XRP update to get into. And then we'll be moving over into Stellar Lumens, Polkadot, Zilliqa, and then wrapping up today's podcast with WorldCoin. And as I mentioned a little bit ago, I will be getting into the stock market indices, specifically the S&P 500 chart going back all the way to the 1940s. I found an incredibly important pattern that will help us all be able to determine how the rest of this year will go as we transition into the year of the dragon in 2024. So in my last Red Pill podcast, I decoded the 2023 World Series, picking the Arizona Diamondbacks to win. And although I discovered some crucial connections that will definitely be useful for the future and future decoding analysis, I did, in fact, misinterpret the code. The Texas Rangers won in Game 5. And as most of you are aware, I don't actively watch sports, but I did decode the last World Cup, the Super Bowl, and the NBA Finals with a more accurate interpretation of that code, which provided us with some deeper insights into how this year would go in the market, the year of the rabbit. So with this recent World Series, I got to learn even more about my decoding system and of course expand more as a decoder, refining my process and sharpening my analysis on these aspects I uncover. And of course, you're fully aware I invest most of my attention into decoding the financial realm with a focus on cryptocurrency and the future blockchain economy. So I've only really taken the time to decode these big sporting events mostly because of my supporters requesting me to look into them over the years. And this recent World Series actually started as a decode on a whim during my last week's live stream, and it took shape from there. But it was definitely rushed, and I did not have the time in my schedule to dedicate to a comprehensive deep dive into the usual concepts that I'd researched during a decode. For those who are interested, you can go back and watch my 2023 Super Bowl decoded to see what I mean. In that one, I had ample time to really go down the rabbit hole with that research before preparing that presentation that I ended up filming and sharing. As opposed to this time around, I had to rush the process due to the dates the games were on, and I didn't even know when the World Series was until it already started, when my supporters told me during the live stream just last week. So something big that I learned was to never force anything into my field of attention unless it's supporting my current flow state. And I want everyone to write that sentence down because it's words of wisdom that'll keep you where you need to be, living from your purpose and preventing yourself from getting distracted along the way. That's definitely something I'm learning to practice more than ever, and it plays a role in this concept we call setting boundaries. But needless to say, I've remembered so much during this year of 2023. And notice I did not say that I learned so much because I truly feel we're all actually unlearning. And what we're unlearning is the toxic code the stewards of this realm attempted to hack into us with. And we're wiping away this cosmic amnesia and truly remembering or reconnecting back to the source code of our higher selves, living from our purpose instead of being used to serve someone else's purpose. Now, since I've been incredibly focused and dedicated in my time with the next two big projects I'm about to release, I did not have so much time to allocate to thoroughly analyzing the wrap-up of this recent World Series, but I did see some connections at a quick glance, one being the number 5. So let me quickly pull this up. And see some of this code that we got. Also, I hope you guys are having an amazing post-eclipse season energy. For me, it definitely feels like a weight off my shoulders. I know last week was hectic for many, but for me, definitely feeling way better than usual. So we're looking into this code that I found of the number 5. Just at a quick glance, the Rangers won in Game 5, of course, during Game 5, and then they scored 5-0. So the score between both teams, of course, was 5. It's a lot of 5s there. Now, why this is important is because this game happened on November 1st. November 1st of this year was a 55 standard date numerology, 55 double-digit date numerology, and then a 10 standard date numerology, which 5 plus 5 is 10. 2 5s together makes 10. Now, these 55s or 2 5s are very important because of the year that we're in right now, the year of the rabbit. And 2 5s is esoterically 25. So let me just quickly get into this code. Rabbit gives you 25. We're in the year of the rabbit. And this was one of the moments where I personally went against my own intuition and misinterpreted the code. And that's with the Texas Rangers. So Texas Rangers giving you this 52 code, just like I was talking about before, how we're in the year of the rabbit, 52. We have rabbit starting with Ra, as you can see, and we have Rangers starting with Ra. Ra being the sun portal, and we just had eclipse season. And I also mentioned how Rangers gives you 21 by the code, and that ties back to Saturn gives you 21 in the same cipher. And I should have prioritized this because I said anything consistent with Saturnian connections should be positive aspects. Since we're in the 2023 year, 2023 becomes 223 in the rules of numerology. This is the mirror of 322, and that's the skull and bones number. And part owner of the Texas Rangers was the most famous bonesman, ex-president George Bush. And George Bush threw the first pitch at this game, just like he did back in 2001, the year that the Diamondbacks won the World Series, in the upset against the New York Yankees right after New York City got ritualized with September 11th. And here we are now in the 119th World Series. Let me show you that. Should be at the top of this page. There you go. 119th edition of the World Series. So there's a direct connection to the year of 2001, which becomes 21, just like we were showing you before. Rangers equals 21, and 9/11 specifically, and that was also a Shemitah year, Shemitah being Saturn. That matters a lot because Skull and Bones is Saturn. It's as Saturnian in its essence as it gets. So Back then, in 2001, the Diamondbacks won their first World Series, and here we are where the Rangers just won their first World Series. So naturally, I knew all of this code was leaning towards the Rangers, but what made me go with the Diamondbacks was the 2011 World Series, which was between the Texas Rangers and the St. Louis Cardinals. So let me try to get this and see if this will come up. So the 2011 World Series, you can see how that went. And the Texas Rangers lost. And not only did they lose to just any team, they lost to a team that is from the state of Missouri. Just like this year, we had the Kansas City Chiefs win the Super Bowl. So we have Missouri, positive aspect this year. We had back in 2011 during the Year of the Rabbit, Missouri, positive aspect that year. And then we could see the Rangers, the same team that played this year, lost. So that was where I think my decode really was based off of with what chose the decision that I had, especially with Game 7. We had the 2001 World Series go to a Game 7. We had this 2011 World Series go to a Game 7. These were sort of the patterns that I was seeing. So you can see how that big connection here of the St. Louis team back then in the Year of the Rabbit winning, as well as this year, the St. Louis team won the Super Bowl, and how directly the Texas Rangers lost that World Series back in the Year of the Rabbit, and here they are now. So that was kind of the big connection that could definitely distort the analysis. But issue is I did not go back into all the connections with the Chinese Zodiac like I did on my last full-length decodes, my 2 that I did earlier this year. I only looked at a couple iterations, so this was definitely rushed and it was definitely an oversight. Now, my decoding system is even stronger than ever because of this, and it reminds me of what to focus on and to continue to listen to my intuition during the decoding process. With that being said, the key points made in this recent World Series decode last week were absolutely powerful. All those connections will definitely help us interpret how things will go into this upcoming year of the dragon in the year of 2024 regarding cryptocurrency and the economy, which is of course what we're focused on mostly here. After all, there's over 50 Red Pill podcasts a year and only a couple of sports decodes, so less than 5% of my work centers around sports, and 100% of the reason for taking the time to even decode sports in the first place actually has nothing to do with the sports, or the athletes, or the game itself, but moreover how it affects everything holistically, from rituals on the world stage to rituals in the market. That's the same thing I do when I get into the decoding process, like I shared in that Super Bowl decode of this year. One of the big things, the big takeaways, was the year that Yale's Skull and Bones was formed. That year was around the same time as the Indian Removal Act, which led to what we call the Trail of Tears and all of that stuff. That connection that I made with the 21st Congress of the United States, again, 21 tied to Saturn, the Skull and Bones tied to Saturn, all of that was what made me go with the Chiefs because of the Native American symbolism. So that's how I see things going moving forward, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. I'll be getting to that definitely in a moment, how I feel that the outcome of this game we just had will affect the world stage. But one last thing to mention about this recent event is the last time the Diamondbacks won the World Series in 2001, that was 22 years ago. So here we are 22 years later, and we could actually see that the Arizona Diamondbacks scored 22 runs, and they only won one World Series so far, of course, during that season 22 years ago. Here we are now 22 years later. Texas Rangers are winning their first World Series. So now, in my opinion, this ritual is complete. That's the 22 Master Builder, Master Destroyer. We had 9/11 to the 119th World Series, completion of that ritual. Considering that the following year after 2001, the year that the Diamondbacks won their first World Series, that was 2002. You remove the zeros, you have 22. So next year, 2024 will naturally be 22 years since that 2-2 year. That's important because dragon equals 22. Keep this in mind. That's the master builder, the master destroyer. I really feel that 2024, the year of the dragon, will be the last epic bull run we have for potentially quite some time. And I will build on that more as we go because I have a lot to talk about even with the year of the snake, which is the following year. And because we've started to move into a war theme since we had 2022 with the Ukraine-Russia conflict. Again, I'll be talking about that in a moment, but just want to share that I think this 22 is very powerful that we're getting in this code, and this recent World Series revealed it all to us. So we talked about the year of the Arizona Diamondbacks winning their World Series in 2001. That was the year of the snake. The Diamondback is a rattlesnake. The next year of the snake is 2026. And as you're aware, we're moving into 2025, the year of the dragon. So we're just about a year out from then anyways. And the way this World Series turned out will definitely be useful for my year of the dragon decode. I'll be releasing at the beginning of 2024, at the start of this year, like I usually do. And I just want everyone here to know the Texas Rangers winning this World Series based off of this code that I'm seeing and the setup into the year of the snake in 2026, while the Diamondbacks Snakes lost this year. This is not a positive thing at all for the world stage. It confirms something I've been talking about since I released my Great American Eclipse Decoded. It tells me that this thesis that I shared months ago about Texas being ritualized between the Great American Eclipses is most likely very accurate. And I'm not saying this to instill fear into anyone or to have anyone move out of the state of Texas, but this outcome is definitely flares up my intuition on something I've been saying for months now, and I believe it ultimately supports it. Now, the next solar eclipse is in April of 2024, so we have some time between now and then. That's about the, building blocks of my part 2 of the Great American Eclipse Decoded, which I'll make as many connections as possible to that month of April in 2024. But until then, I just want everyone to remember they use sports and these big sporting events to distract humanity. They give you a winning team so that they can wreak havoc on you at a later date. This is what happened with the Argentina World Cup. Argentina won the World Cup. Now you look at the Argentinian peso chart during and after the last World Cup, and you'll see for yourself. You can see the struggle the people deal with when you look at that chart. Look at the year the Eagles won their first Super Bowl. So the year that the Eagles won their first Super Bowl, 2017, the streets of Philadelphia then, on the day of that Super Bowl win, looked completely different than the way that it usually does, because the streets of Philadelphia look horrendous. And I love Philadelphia. I wish it didn't turn into the mess that it is now. I would never wish that on anyone or any city. But I remember when they won that Super Bowl and all these people got together to celebrate and unite because of a sports team winning. But they can't come together to clean up their streets or take care of their own community. They're just hypnotized by sports, this bread and circus. Look at the investments in that last World Cup with Qatar. The amount of money they put into this single sporting event could have single-handedly supported a recovery of the Argentinian economy and prevented the poverty that many are dealing with since this hyperinflation. But even the people of a nation don't care about their own people. All they care about is the sports and the athletes and worshiping them like gods. It's literally Roman theatrics. So what does the Texas Rangers winning this World Series tell me? And the Denver Nuggets and the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Eagles, who represent the city of Philadelphia, which was historically symbolic of freedom. It brings me back to this one key term, FEMA. And with this upcoming election and Biden's clone ready to short circuit at any moment, Trump's arrest ritual just a couple months ago, and the division in this country post C19 experiment at a really volatile point, not just this country, but many countries around the world. During that time of that experiment of those 2 years, of C19, this country gave FEMA all the power. Well, the Texas Rangers are a reference to law enforcement, police. Then the team that won the Stanley Cup this year was the Vegas Golden Knights, a knight like Knights Templar or Teutonic Knights. This team also won their first Stanley Cup. They're from Paradise, Nevada, same place the next Super Bowl will be hosted in 2024. Just like the Diamondbacks were from Phoenix, Arizona, the place this Super Bowl this year was hosted. You see how scripted it is? Well, we have the Chiefs, the Knights, and the Rangers. This is all war symbolism. And we just had Israel declare war 50 years to the day after the Yom Kippur War in 1971. Then the year the Diamondbacks won the World Series in 2001 was immediately after 9/11. Then there was war in Afghanistan. Here we are 22 years later in the 119th World Series, and they lose. To me, this means war, and it's not just about war against nations. This will be about a war of the military and law enforcement against their own people. Something more like a martial law. The war of the Rangers and the Knights against their own people. Go study your history and you'll see how this time around is basically mirroring the times of World War II perfectly. Now, again, I don't want to scare anyone here. This isn't about pushing fear. I'm just sharing my truth as a decoder and feeling into all of this without bias. Now, I feel there's plenty of time for this all to develop, but I have my calendar marked for this upcoming solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024, just a week before the ritual I'm anticipating to happen on Monday, April 15th of 2024. Can't get any more specific than that. I've been talking about this date for at least 2 years now, pretty much, that I expect a ritual on that exact date. We could very well have the next phase of this current conflict in Israel develop and expand into April and May of 2024. And since this Russia-Ukraine essence is still in the air, all this would take is China's involvement, and there you go. You know what that means. So we're moving into the year of the dragon. China is the dragon. That's my interpretation of how these major sporting events in this year of 2023 have all come together to reveal to us the supreme ritual they're intending on doing over the next couple of years. And remember, this Aquarian Age transition ritual all started back in 9/11 of 2001, which was the year of the snake. And the climax of this whole cycle, I believe, will also be in the year of the snake. That's 2026. That's making me feel that 2024 is really the year to, 2025 is the year of the snake. That's why I think 2024 is a very, very important year to be organized, to collaborate with your people, to stay focused, to not get distracted, to make sure that you embody abundance, because you're going to need it in the year of the snake. Of course, there was a very powerful ritual in 2020. That was the year of the rat, through the year of the ox, which was the Shemitah, and this current year of the rabbit, which was also the Jubilee, a cycle that comes around once every 50 years, and that's over now. So you know that now that the Jubilee is over, they're going to ramp up the rituals. Just like we saw at the end of Jubilee, they instantly started this war. And like I mentioned earlier, I'll go even deeper into all of this in my Year of the Dragon Decoded that's coming out in a couple months. Until then, we're now in the final stages of this Year of the Rabbit. And I want us to consider something important about the past decodes I've released, where I put emphasis on the first week of November during the 44th week of this year, specifically for cryptocurrency. And what just happened? Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX was found guilty of 7 counts of fraud and now faces 110 years in prison. This pretty much happened 1 year exactly after FTX collapsed during the lunar eclipse of our last lunar cycle back in November 2022. That was November 8th of 2022, and FTX was officially bankrupt by November 11th. And this reminded me, and should remind you, of how scripted this all is. So we did in fact have a first week of the year ritual specifically to crypto. We can see that the markets are actually pretty healthy right now. And there's so much talk about this again. And I believe any publicity at this time is good for crypto, regardless of everything else that's happening on the world stage. And we will be getting into the charts, of course, and talking more about what to anticipate with the price action. But ultimately, the more eyes that are on crypto, whether it's positive or negative, at this time, it does not matter. It's just more prana going towards crypto. And as a crypto investor, consider that a good thing. So getting back to the last days of the year of the rabbit, remember, rabbit equals 52. And the day that's leaving 52 days in this year is coming up this week. It'll be November 9th. November 9th leaves 52 days in this year. And in the Gregorian system, this is technically the 9/11 date or the 11/9 date in the USA. And we just had the 119 World Series, the 119th World Series, where the Texas Rangers won. 52. Again, rabbit, 52. This day. 52 days left in the year. 119, just like we had the 119 World Series. Again, keep this stuff in mind. So now this is very important because it connects to this upcoming Chinese New Year. We're talking about the year of the rabbit. Now we're going to talk about the year of the dragon, which will be on the new moon, February 10th of 2024. And look at this. This date connects to this by 93 days. And this Chinese New Year is a Saturday, a Saturn's day, and 93 is the code of Saturn. 93. We're in the year 223, Skull and Bones. You know it. We saw the direct connection a little bit ago with Rangers, and that 21 tied back to Saturn, 21. These are very important connections. And now that we have these results, we can determine how this is all going to go down. And because of these Saturnian connections to Skull and Bones, and of course, reminder of November 18th also being on a Saturn's day, November 18th is going to be the day leaving 320. It is the 322nd day of this year. That is the Skull and Bones number, 322, 223 year. So definitely important. This day leaves 43 days left in the year, which is tied directly to George Bush because he was the 43rd president of the United States, and he just threw the ceremonial first pitch for the team that he's part owner of, the Texas Rangers, who won. He's a bonesman. That means that this 223 and 322 code is super important, more than ever, and it's proven on the world stage. And you can see how these two dates between November 18th and Chinese New Year are 2 months and 23 days apart. 223, 223, 322. So the 223 code based off this 223 year, based off of the 322nd day of this year, you can't make this up. Saturn Day, Saturn Day. These are all Saturnian codes. Now, because this lands on a Saturday and the market will be closed, it could be tied to an event that could happen on the world stage, and it could be tied to war. So If you consider this date right here, it is also connected to the day of Donald Trump's arrest, which was on the 24th, by 86 days. 86 is directly tied to Israel. The Yom Kippur War was on 8/6. Technically, October is the 8th month on the 6th day. 8/6. This 86 and 68 code is a war code. Okay, write that down. Now, Rosh Hashanah, the end of Jubilee this year, landed on a 68 date numerology. That was September 16th, and the dates are 63 days apart. Let me show you that. So we have 9/16. You can see that 68 that I was talking about. Look at this 63. And we know that we're in the Texas Rangers' 63rd season as a team, and they won during this season. This is pretty much the start of sidereal Scorpio, right there, November 17th into the 18th. So it perfectly ties into this war theme because Scorpio is ruled by Mars, the god of war. So final thing to mention about this November 18th, it's that it's perfectly tied to the current Israel war, which started on the 7th of October, and it's 42 days apart, just like the word war equals 42. Back during the Yom Kippur War, that lasted 2 weeks and 5 days. This time around, I do not see it ending anytime soon. I just see this being the second major domino to fall after the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So this crisis in Israel, sadly, is just getting started, sadly. This crisis in Palestine, the Gaza Strip. And it wouldn't be shocking if we have more development on this happening around this November 18th date that I just shared with you. Between November 9th as one impulse, November 18th specifically tied to the war theme because of this 322 connection. Going out with a bang. And this supports this code even more. Remember, I mentioned the Yom Kippur War lasted 2 weeks and 5 days. That's 25. We're in the year of the rabbit. Rabbit giving you that 2552 code. Well, when we tie this C19 date, which was March 11th, and you consider it with this year, it's pretty fascinating actually, because you see 252, that's the palindrome of the number 25. This was the day after Silicon Valley Bank failed and the day leading into Signature Bank failing. And I'm pretty sure another bank in the US just failed leading into the weekend. So we're probably going to hear about some more banking failure stuff over the next 2 weeks. Keep that in mind as well. This would be about 44 months since the start of C19, actually, if we go back to 2020. So we could see March 11, 2020, 44 months after. And remember, we just had the World Series in the 44th week of the year, the same week that Sam Bankman-Fried is sentenced to over 100 years in jail. This man being one of the single biggest fraud rituals in U.S. history, and he was specifically tied to cryptocurrency. So think about this, family. SBF is literally the crypto Bernie Madoff. And remember, Bernie Madoff died on the day of Bitcoin and the entire crypto market hitting their all-time highs. So let me just quickly show you this real quick. Some of you guys probably remember this time frame, April 14th of 2021, the day that Bernie Madoff died. Pretty much everything was at all-time highs on that date. Now, of course, Bitcoin and Ethereum and some other altcoins went to go up a little bit more later in that year. But by May of 2021, alt season was effectively over. And the top for most altcoins, including Bitcoin and Ethereum, all combined, was April 14th, the 144 date. So all things considered, and to be fair, the entire crypto market essentially topped out on the same day Bernie Madoff died. And during this bull run, we all experienced our own crypto Bernie Madoff, and then you enter in Sam Bankman-Fried. Bernie Madoff was born during the year of the tiger in 1938, and he died right before the year of the tiger, just like the rise and fall of Andrew Tate, who was also born during the year of the tiger. Just like the Cincinnati Bengals lost both of their biggest games during a year of the tiger. They even lost a Super Bowl at the start of the year of the tiger. Again, you can see how scripted this all is and how important the Chinese zodiac is in it all. We just need to do our part to stay clear and focused when we're implementing this code and this whole decoding system to interpret it effectively, which we're all getting stronger at week by week, month by month. And I want to say how grateful I am to be surrounded by so many incredible decoders here in this community. And shout out to everyone here in our community. What we're doing here is so incredibly rare, and I can't wait to see how we all collaborate together moving into the year of 2024 to make this the most transformational year. So this is a good time to pivot over into the charts. We're going to do a quick analysis on the indices. I want to just tap into the Dow Jones really quickly and the NASDAQ, and then we're going to be fully going over everything that I shared earlier with the S&P chart going back to the 1940s. So here we are over in the Dow Jones, and I just want you to see this. I'm going to go to a daily chart. We had our FOMC meeting, a perfect bottom in the full moon of October. Let me pull up these moons. Look at this. Perfect bottom on the full moon, and then we rose right into this major trend line. I'm going to turn off this noise and you'll see what I'm saying. So this major trend line has been in place since the yearly highs. Now we're approaching over 90 days, so going on 3 months plus. And we can see that this FOMC meeting just launched directly into this resistance line. Now, the market is opening up tomorrow. We'll see how everything goes. We know we have the new moon in about a week. So we have a lot that could go down between now and then, but this is pretty interesting how we see this buyback. Now I'm going to go over to the NASDAQ. You're going to see the same thing. Look at this. I have not adjusted this trend line at all. And it's really funny, the fact that we came up to this trend line again, even though we got sold off slightly beneath the prior support line, because I was sharing in my interview with the Bearable Bull, the last interview that I did with him, this same concept. I talked about coming back up into this and then another sell-off, and then how we could go up again, and then we could even go down one more time, and we can make our way down to some of these lower side targets following this bull flag concept. So I'm not saying that's necessarily how it's going to go, and I want to quickly, get through this so I could get into that S&P data, because we could effectively be bottoming out in this market very, very soon. So I just wanted to share how this whole move from top to bottom has respected the key trend lines we've been watching since July, almost 5 months ago. But today I really want to focus on this S&P chart pattern that has been in play for 80 years, and that's all about the final months of the year of the rabbit. So this is about the end of the year of the rabbit. Again, that's what today's podcast will be titled. And that's where we are now. So let's get into this year of the rabbit S&P analysis that dates back to the 1940s when this realm was experiencing World War II. So let me extend this out. All right. Let's have some fun, shall we? Let me take a quick sip of water. All right, so we're going to be going back. These red boxes, just so you know, are a Shemitah year, and these green boxes are the year of the dragon. So what you'll notice is slightly before the year of the dragon is what we're going to be analyzing today. So this was the last year of the dragon back in 2012. We're going to zoom in, and we're going to see a pattern here, how the market has bottomed out effectively into this pivot point of November, late November. All right. I want you to keep that in mind. Late November. This is on a Friday, by the way, that we bottomed. Then I'm going to go back, iteration before that. And this was a very interesting cycle. I want to make note of it because it was the dot-com bubble, and we had the year of the dragon going through a Shemitah year. So just kind of want to focus into this pivot point at the end of October. We did rise up, came back a little bit, but this is definitely invalidating what I'm going to be getting into. Year of the Dragon back right before this huge flash crash that we had in 1987. If I go to the bottom, you're going to see it's Friday, December 4th. So the first time I showed you was really late November, and then this iteration is early December. Be zooming out some more. You're going to see right here into this pivot, we have early December as our lows right before the Year of the Rabbit. Keep that in mind. Now here we have this iteration late November. I'm going to have to change this up a little bit. This iteration right here, we have late November. And we have back here, effectively pivoting late November. We did come down a little bit lower, but this was a very weird time frame because this was the start of World War II. And we'll be talking about that more in a little bit. Here, some of the pivots, low opportunities into the 1st of December, then rising into the cycle of the Year of the Dragon. So we have early December, effectively. And that's too far back anyways to even consider because that's 1927. So we have a pattern where we tend to bottom out around the last Friday of November or the first Friday of December. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here into this calculator, and you're going to see this last Friday in November is November 24th, and then the next Friday would be December 1st. So you could write that down between November 24th to December 1st. Now we're going to see another pattern here, which is that after we bottom into late November, here you are. Remember I told you November 24th as your first Friday date. And then right here, we bottomed on the 25th of November. We rose up and then kept going up all the way until early April. Okay, now let's go back. Here we have a little bit of an anomaly with the lows, still not much off, just 1 month difference. Mid-October, we topped out in late March. So another theme you're going to start to see, that we tend to move up into late March and early April. Over here, you got your lows in the very beginning of December, Friday, December 4th. We went up into April. You can see pretty much a double top, so that counts April 12th. Going to zoom out. Going to go to this cycle over here. Lows coming in very early December. Right there. Then moving up effectively into April. You can see we topped out in April and we did not recover until sometime around July. So this was a very quick recovery, but we did get a pullback into June. Here we go. We have this cycle. This one was very awkward, but we did get the lows in Friday, November 22nd. Remember here, we're saying Friday, November 24th. We got this shakeout candle, buyback, and we went up effectively until May. So early May was about the time we topped out, correction into June, effectively following the same pattern every single time. Now we're going to the iteration before that. Let's see what happens. So bottoming out November 23rd, just like we were saying, November 24th, which lands on a Friday. That's really interesting because that's what's happening every single time. Then we move up, and this one actually still sort of similar, late March, but we had a rally leading into the end of the year, which pretty much follows similar ideas, but this was just a lower high. We actually held structure though. That's getting into TA terms now, and I don't really want to go there. I just want to show you simply the pattern. So we've come up into the high right around the end of March, pretty much pivoting into April, correction into June or into May, recovery. This was a clean cycle. Shemitah mixed with Dragon Year, very interesting times because that's what happened in the dot-com bubble too. Anyways, let's go back. This is your World War II cycle. We have topping in early April. So you guys see the pattern. We are getting the last really solid buying opportunity either by November 24th into December 1st. Between that week makes a lot of sense. If it extends out a little more, who cares? But This is your time frame to anticipate this move to the downside. And then moving up into early April. Now, why is this so important? Because in 2024, early April, we have a solar eclipse. So moving up into late March into early April aligns with a theory. And that's all about our solar cycle. So please consider this, everyone. This pattern that we have, it aligns really nicely with this next year of the dragon. Even in war, we moved up into early April. Look, the market topped out on April 8th. That's the day of our solar eclipse in 2024. Guess what date the solar eclipse was in 1940? It was April 7th. Just a day difference. We were in war then too. Let's go back here. Again, very awkward to consider this one, but early May. We literally moved up into early May in just a couple iterations, but still that was the latest we moved up to. Okay, so there it is. Most likely bottoming very soon, but I can't necessarily say that this bottom here that we got in October, late October, is going to get I can't say that we'll get lower than this, because we have seen in many iterations that this was your final impulse on a deeper correction. That might mean we can get a W again, or we might get something a little bit of like a higher W kind of breakout like this, where your first V is down a little bit more deep. Again, we just saw a couple iterations with this kind of vibe of late October, but late November seems to be the time frame that we get the final buying up for the year. So we could still have that deeper correction around this time frame, November 24th through December 1st, and then recovery effectively until the first week of April. So I'm letting you guys know very far in advance how this could all go down. And if we were to consider how far out that I'm preparing you, it's 4 months ahead. And if we were to bring it all the way back to today, being the November 5th date, we're going on 5 months of preparation, guys. So I hope you appreciate this insight, because this really allows us to position ourselves effectively. If there is going to be any impulse to the downside, it's coming soon. It's right after this new moon into this upcoming full moon, this full moon being on the 27th, I believe. Yeah, there you go, the 27th of November. So the November 24th date that we see in a lot of these other iterations is perfectly surrounding the upcoming full moon. You could pretty much think that the full moon week of the 27th, which is the full moon, all the way up until that Friday when the market is open, it's most likely the week it's going to happen. All right. So I hope you guys appreciate that. That was going all the way back to World War II. Now, an issue with all of this, and I might make an isolated decode just for that, it has everything to do with the 1940 Year of the Dragon. Mostly because in 1939, right there before the end of the Year of the Rabbit, we had the start of war. Now, this started on September 1st, 1939, in the Year of the Rabbit. This year, it started on October 7th, effectively. Now, the eclipse in the following year is the same date pretty much that we have. And remember, I talked about a ritual on April 15th on a Monday. Well, April 15th landed on a Monday back in 1940 as well. Will there be some sort of flash correction event due to war in May of this upcoming year? I believe so. I believe it is a ripple effect of time, and this is the exact time frame. We're going back into it, aligning it all. So mark your calendars, family. April is a powerful month. It will also be the month of the Bitcoin halving. So I'll talk more about that at a later date. For now, I think we talked enough about this. We will just quickly pull up this chart with candles, and we'll show how we're close to hitting the top of this trend line as well. But that's just another lower high. So you really wouldn't be getting bullish on this until we break this moment right here. Now, a lot of people back here at the end of September thought that the stock market bottomed, and then they were very confident of that, and it went another leg lower just quite recently, a couple weeks ago. People are making a lot of drastic, analysis calls without actually looking back at these prior iterations to how it's all coming together holistically. So you guys have all these elements. If you're interested in particular charts or particular assets, do the same thing I just showed you here. When you see that all these iterations of the same timing is happening the same way with the same chart patterns over and over and over again, don't try to spend too much time overthinking things. It seems pretty obvious to me. So targets on the S&P pullback could be anywhere between the 618, 4,200 points, so 4,200, and then this major horizontal trend line around 4,100. Let's just say between 4,100, 4,200 is good enough. And I would actually like a W. That would be ideal, since most of us aren't even stock market investors anyways. This is just helping to understand the energy that could be short term. So imagine we come up into this Friday close, we get up a little bit higher, then we come down somewhere between 4,100, and then we have this kind of energy. Maybe like this, and then boom, one final pullback again, but it's not as high. And then after that, a little bit of a rally into this April timeframe, late March, and maybe not a new all-time high. Sell off like that, it'll look hardcore, but it'll actually be on the outside of a prior resistance to confirm it as a support, and then that could rise up into the new year perfectly fine. That would look like a pretty dramatic correction, about 11%. But it's not weird. We've seen this before. Just between the current yearly highs and the current yearly lows, we have, well, not yearly lows, excuse me. This correction that we've had lately was 11%. So that wouldn't be out of the cards to have that in this setup. It'd be interesting to see how this goes, but that's kind of the feeling that I have. Taking it one step at a time, it's very likely that we get another impulse to the downside between November 24th and December 1st. I'll leave it at that. Making it over to Bitcoin. Actually, we're going to be going to this chart right here. Bitcoin keeps getting rejected on this outside. It's important. Okay, so we have the Bitcoin chart now. This was the start of the year of 2023. We were treating this red trend line as a support. Then we effectively broke through it in August. Now we've come back up to it. And you could see when we zoom in, we're getting a lot of rejections on the outside. So a prior support isn't no longer a support. It's seeming more like a resistance. This run-up that we had to 36,000 was in perfect alignment with the golden ratio. If I was to pull a fib from our prior yearly high down to this swing low, we gravitated right up to this 1618. So I'll just show you. If I was to pull a fib from this level right here down to this level, so from there to there, we have our 1618 has effectively been tapped. So we, by the way, are pulling this fib with a linear scale, not with this selected on. We want to do linear when we're doing super short-term fib pulls. Like this is not that much data to work with when we only have about 2 or 3 months, 4 months. When we're working with years, we want to be using logarithmic. So we're in a logarithmic chart, and like this chart over here, we're going to have this setting turned on. All right, so when we zoom out, we can see that we've gotten above the 0.5 fib. This is really like the finality of, how do I say this? I shouldn't be using these terms anymore because we're in a different phase. So never mind. My point here is that we feel absolutely a recovery vibe right now. That seems to be it. there's really more positive to say about Bitcoin than negative. And we do have this upcoming ETF that could be launched. I have my target week between the 13th through the 18th, I believe. That is a very powerful week. But we can't be 100% certain that this ETF going live and launching is going to be just full-blown bullish. Remember, the New World Order, the way that they make these markets go is if they want you to feel like positive about the real thing, they wouldn't bake in the prices the way they do. So if anything, this move up, this impulse that we've had could just be getting the price to these levels. FOMO kicks in, and then they do a quick, sharp pullback. They buy up everything after a launch, buy the rumor, sell the news kind of stuff, So my point here is that we have gotten over this 0.5 fib. That's big. We broke above this horizontal resistance line sitting at around 30,000. That's big. We can see we've gotten above this level over here back in April, May to June of 2022. That was the last level we were holding of support based on these prior levels here. And then that horizontal support broke, which led to more continuation into the bottom of our bear market. Getting back above that level, these levels here, is big. But what we don't seem to have done is any confirmations back on those levels. I'm not saying Bitcoin needs to go all the way back down to 30,000 or 31,000, but I'm just letting you know this is a very precarious kind of breakout. The way that we have these breakouts here, it's not really a confidence thing, especially when we're getting rejected on these levels that are in alignment with a prior support, which are seemingly now a resistance. And we've hit the 1618 in this micro pull. I hope all that helps people see why this is kind of awkward. And it also kind of feels like the way Bitcoin has been lately when it tops out. You can see we just have a bunch of green candles. Let me show you. Just green, 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 and then a chop. Here, straight greens, chop. Here, straight greens, chop a little bit more, but this style of chop that we're getting is normal to follow by a short-term pullback. Okay, we could see it here, this chop on the rise where every other day a wick hits a higher high wick, but then we keeled over for that short-term pullback. Okay, you see where this pulled back to? It pulled right back to that level right here. So as I'm over here, just keep your eyes over there. You see, up, chop, returned right back to that level. All right, look here. When we broke out all this chop, we effectively came right back to the lows that back tested the prior high level. So keep your eyes here and you'll watch. Chop, fell over, back tested the prior resistance. Here, up, chop, back tested that prior resistance again, really confirming that that is done with. Now we have these two levels. Okay, so before it was this level and this level, we effectively back tested it there and there. Now when we zoom in, we have nothing has back tested these two tops. And where would that be? That would be at 31,500, 31,000 to 31,500. So will Bitcoin do a similar thing that it's done before? Well, if it was to do that, that would be a 11% pullback, a 10 or 11% pullback. It doesn't need to happen. And I'm just letting you know that's kind of how Bitcoin has been behaving now for a couple of years, at least the last year without a miss. And one thing I mentioned in my last YouTube video was that whatever lows that we're getting on this lunar eclipse, by the next full moon, we should not be lower than that. So that was one thing that I shared. I believe I could quickly recap it by going into this chart over here, just to give us an idea of what prices to consider and how quick this can all go down. So here we had our boom, solar eclipse, lunar eclipse. Look at this white dot being higher than this white dot. Okay, now I'm going to go back. Second solar eclipse in the cycle, lunar eclipse, technically here. Then look at the next the next full moon. We were higher on the full moon close. Now we're going to go back another cycle. We have Here is your solar eclipse, here is your lunar eclipse, then here's your next full moon. Every time we had a higher close on the full moon that followed the lunar eclipse, and we went in an uptrend. Okay, so whatever our lunar eclipse was this time, it sits at, let's just say 34,000. With having a pullback anytime between now and then, we can still come up by November 27th and close higher. So remember I told you November 24th is an interesting date for the NASDAQ or for the S&P. That doesn't necessarily mean Bitcoin needs to follow it to the T. Bitcoin does really like to go low on full moons and move up into new moons. We know that. We're moving into a new moon now. Our essence is up. I'm wondering, do we pivot at the new moon, still respecting this resistance line? It'll look something like this. 1 second, let me see. Like that. November 13th, 14th, maybe something like this. And then keep it moving. Like a very weird quick rejection buyback, like the inverse of what happened here, of this Twin Towers. You know what I'm saying? Or the kind of like that effect, real sharp, quick. We know Bitcoin does this. This is cryptocurrency, right? I hope this is all making sense. We can still get back up by the full moon and close above 34,000. So I'm going to put a horizontal ray there. This is what Bitcoin tends to do. That horizontal ray shows us something we can anticipate. Now, one other thing, we have this trend line over here respecting these tops. That could be how it goes, where it's only quick, short, and sweet pullback like that, only coming down to slightly below 33,000. That would still be a pretty decent move, given that in prior iterations, Bitcoin has a 6% pullback to a 9% pullback, and that would be 9%. Not as deep as some might assume, but we have the horizontal level at around 31,000 to 32,000, and then we have this level right here. By the way, this is a super important trend line. I'm going to turn this all off, and I want you guys to follow this trend line with your eyes. So it's this yellow trend line, kicking in from this prior all-time high in 2017, being here at the breaking point, which led us into our bear market lows, gravitating right back up to it, rejected again, second time, and then recently finally breaking back above it. So that's a very interesting trend line, how on these rejections and this short-term support, if I zoom out, it hit the prior all-time high. Like, what are the odds? So that trend line being backtested would not be weird either. I would probably take some action on that. If that happens, that would be around 32,500. So that gives you an idea, between 31,500 and 32,500. That seems to be like a quick, short and sweet pullback. And then Bitcoin can still close the month above 34K, above the 34K level in the month of November. Let's get to some traditional analysis, shall we? I'm going to be turning off these drawings. Going to be looking at some moving averages. Absolutely wild breakout on this bi-weekly. So we have a bi-weekly close tonight. It's very strong. Really nothing you can say negatively about this. We have, could be the first bi-weekly close above, mamma mia. All right, this is great to see. This could be the first bi-weekly close above the 55 simple moving average in a long time. Oh, shit. All right, well, we see this back here. It led to the uptrend overall, again, confirming that these are, in fact, our cycle lows. And then the wolf cross is important. Not 100% set in stone, but having this 8 simple cross above this 55, big. We're above all the moving averages right now. Bitcoin is above all of the bi-weekly MAs. We have the 8 above the 13, above the, okay, so this 21 is about to cross above the 34. Once we get all of these to cross above that 55, it's game on. Bitcoin will continue up. That could take a long time though, because these are bi-weekly candles. Weekly looking incredible. We are above everything. So that means our 200s are below us. Our 55 is in a precarious place, but that's just because of the sell-off speed that we have in a crypto market compared to like a traditional stock. But we had this wolf cross on the 8 above the 55. That looks very nice and pretty similar to this iteration back here. Let me look into the 3-day chart because I think that's what we have coming in tomorrow. All right, so remember these two prior tops that I spoke about? Well, our 21 exponential on the 3-day is pretty much there. It's about 30,500. So if we're going to have any pullbacks, that would be an area to consider for sure. Let me see. I guess the daily analysis. All right, yes. So our 55 and our 200s are still sitting down there at 28.5. It would be definitely better for them to move up, but they've been on an upslope all year. And now we've had this 55 cross above this 200. Some people call this a golden cross. I don't use any of that language. I don't like that stuff. It doesn't indicate much of anything. Actually, most of the time when we have these so-called golden crosses, Bitcoin tends to get a pullback. So yeah, I believe that would be your iteration right here if they're using the 200 exponential. So you have your golden cross right there, and like a week and a half later, you had a pretty dramatic pullback to the 200. So yeah, that's not the reason I don't talk about that kind of stuff is it's never really worked. It's not really mattered much, as opposed to a wolf cross in the daily has led to dramatic swings, and it's a faster moving average cross. So you're more prepared. And anyways, we'll talk about more of that stuff later if needed. One thing we're noticing on Bitcoin on the daily is it's respecting the 8 simple moving average. It has not closed below, and it kind of seems to like holding it, but I do feel a crown top is forming. Bitcoin likes to make these crown tops where it has an impulse up, a couple days of pullback, one move to the top, and then it turns into like what appears to be a head and shoulders, but it's not it looks like that. Also, a great example of it was back here. So let me turn off the moving averages and show you what I'm talking about. This was a really extended version of this crown top. So you see we moved up, correction, chop, a couple of days of highs, but then this Twin Towers event, and then it kind of looked like a weird head and shoulders. But this crown top vibe is normal for Bitcoin. That could be potentially forming right now. We've seen it do that every single time that it's gotten an impulse and then slowed down. Again, impulse, slow down, correction, chop, slow down, deeper correction. Here, chop, impulse, chop, correction, again, and then we see it just keeps back testing key levels. Chop, slow down, correction. These impulses are too quick, too fast. And that was definitely the case here because Bitcoin had a 10% candle on October 23rd. Insanity. It looks like it's slowing down. All right, we should be getting over to ETH now. And I guess if you want upside targets, Bitcoin's upside target is 39K. That's possible before the end of this year, meaning as late as literally transitioning into January. But for right now, I would be looking to see how the stock market opens tomorrow because of the way the stock market analysis went that I just shared with you about November 24th and December 1st. So let me get over to ETH. ETH even making a new high today in the microstructure. So chop, a rise up. Yep. A little bit of this dominance is rolling over. It is a weekend, of course, so if Bitcoin is slightly bullish or slightly down, kind of more neutral energy, that liquidity could flow over into the altcoins since that's all that's trading right now, just crypto. Let me see what's going on with this. Might be telling me something. Oh, yeah. So we're going to go on daily closes. We're going to look at something here. Boom. Okay, so right now I have daily closes. Ooh, we're breaking out. Like, I mean, if we really did this by daily closes. Whew. Let me see if I'm getting a weekly pattern. Fuck yeah. Yep, that would be clean on a weekly. 1, 2, 3, 4 touch points. Doesn't matter with this because of that back test right there after the deeper correction and the breakout. ETH is probably not going any lower this year. What I mean by that is this is your cycle low. Pretty wild shit. We were accumulating some Ethereum around this recent solar eclipse. I'm sure you got the updates if you're over in Discord. I was taking that last solar eclipse very seriously, so I accumulated both Ethereum and XRP back to back, and I got in on Bitcoin I think around 26 on a buy. So that was definitely a well-timed play. All right, yeah, I mean, really, if I wanted to look at this particular trend line, I could consider that because it's combining the daily versus the weekly in regards to closes. And if this was to have a more dramatic sell-off, it could look like something like that into late November, the November full moon. And we would have a higher low, which could look like a W. I mean, I wouldn't even care to put too much emphasis on that, but let me think. Yeah, it could be something like that. So like this. Let me change the color so you guys could kind of get what I'm doing. Make it white. Okay, so you see all the cycle low retests all around this level, return back to this level, and then that could absolutely play out that way. And it would be in alignment with this support at the bottom, as well as this descending line. Now, what we'd want to do in a scenario like this is pull up our moving averages and see what's going on. So we do have the 55 interacting with this line. Let me go over to the weekly. Let's see. This is very noisy. Okay, I want to take this off, but consider if I zoom in, you can see my 200 exponential, my 55 simple, pretty much everything is right below that 382 fib. So this tells me that if there was a deeper pullback, we can see Ethereum below the 382 slightly, like somewhere into 1640, 1650. So keep that in mind. I'll draw some horizontal lines on my chart to help you guys out with this. Pretty much anything below that 382. And this 1640 level is in alignment with all of those macro moving averages. How are we out on the bi-weekly? Okay, I want you guys to pay attention to this. We see that ETH is pushing up against our bi-weekly resistance. So we would really feel more confident in a breakout and continuation up on ETH if we could get a bi-weekly close above 1950. So we can see over here, it's Twin Towers moment, that's 1940. You could see over here, 1940. So we're right at 1876. 1950 would bring confidence. And then we still have this 55 simple ahead of us. So nothing truly bull zone until that is breached as well. But in the meantime, we have this idea, this thesis that could be potentially in play around this 55 simple moving average. And then even just the 382 would be great. Even just the 382 would be great. That's probably your key level, actually. If I was to turn off everything and just pull up like a VPVR. No way. Wow, there's so much trading that was happening at 12. That's one thing that's nice about VPVR is it tells you that's an insight that's fascinating. It would have really been saying, buy. One moment. Okay, we're getting this at 1572. Damn, it's close. So it is a lot of that tells me that if we get down to these levels, even if we get a tail lower, it's probably going to get bought back quick. Anything below 1600 at this time is probably going to bounce. And that's not weird. That shouldn't be weird to anyone because we recently came down to that level for probably, for 2 months. So there was an accumulation zone down there. That was right around the last solar eclipse. So again, yep. All right. So I'm pretty confident about these levels. That'd be a nice pullback territory to get some ETH. Let me go over to XRP. We have a lot to talk about with this. We're going to be looking at this 2-day analysis. Now, do you guys remember when we talked about a very important cross on XRP that made us determine when we would get this impulse? And it was this cross right here. It was the 55 simple above the 200 simple. Okay, the 55 simple above the 200 simple. And if you take from the last time this happened, the last iteration where this occurred, which was here, September 17th, and you go over 68 days, you had your impulse to the top, to that peak. 68, remember that. Now you go over here and you could see from the May 1st date, you could almost call it May 3rd. It's pretty much the same. And you go over here, 70 days, and you had this top. Now notice the correction. Remember back here, cross, top, big wick, correction. Here, cross, top, big wick, correction. It's following identical. Now this is what's scary. Go to the day of the peak, wick top, and go over to the bottom. 34 days. Do here, you go from this peak, measure to the bottom, 36 days. Again, nearly identical. So lastly, I went back to measure off of that last bottom to the next impulse, and we'll see what we get. So we have from here up to, one moment, family. The new cycle top, that's 106 days. So I want to take that 106 into consideration, and I'll be measuring off of this correction over here, 106 days, and let's see where this brings us. It brings us to December 1st. I want you to know that the new moon is going to be on December 12th. So this was a very like washout looking candle vibe. I would be banking more on the new moon. And the reason why is because if I zoom in over here, that was your new moon impulse. Okay, so we topped out from here, 106 days into that new moon. Just keep that in mind. I think that definitely plays a role. And in between the impulse that you got into February 10th was a new moon. You could see moved from the full moon to the new moon, corrected into the full moon. That's powerful stuff to look at. Shows you the moon cycle is very important even for XRP. Okay, so I just wanted to share that this big correction over here was all about the SEC lawsuit against Ripple. And I want you to look how we came down into the 200 simple moving average. We went a little bit lower, but ultimately we respected that 200 simple moving average. This was a black swan, by the way, isolated black swan for Ripple. Now, if we go over here, we can see that after this move up, we came perfectly down to the 200 simple. We touched it essentially pretty much almost 4 times. Powerful stuff. Now, after we back tested that, we got above the 55 simple. I want you to look at this white moving average when we went up. So top, a month or so later, touch the 200, then get above the 55 simple, and then we moved up into the new moon. So look at this. Correction. We got above the 55 simple right here, and we topped at the next new moon before a correction, a little bit of sideways and up. So I want us to consider that this move up that we're getting right now, you see the green line across the screen, is the same price that we're trading at today. It was the same vibe of all of this. It's hilarious. I just think this is really wild how it keeps cycling back in the same ways off of the same moving average crosses to similar prices, etc. One thing to get more serious now is after we broke above the 55 and topped out into the new moon, we came back to the 55 before heading up to our next bigger impulse. So we want to look at the 55 now and see where that is. And that's sitting at 56 cents. All right. Now, considering this moving average moves up about 1 penny every 2 weeks, we could consider this moving average to move up about 2 pennies between now and the full moon in late November. This would put it at about 58 cents. So I want you to keep 58 cents in mind. Another thing to consider is the XRP 3-day chart. The last time we had this similar layout of moving averages that we have today was back in late 2020 into early 2021. It was right around here. That was the last time we had this posture. And what I mean by that is these 200 moving averages, the green moving averages, were at the bottom. You could see today, they are below. We have the 200 simple here and 200 exponential and simple below us. Same thing there. You see back over here, from there to there, they were on top. Then they flipped. That's what I mean. So I want you to notice the 200s out of all the moving averages, then having the 55 simple above, like we have here. We're also getting a wolf cross on the 3-day where the 8 is crossing above the 55. That's pretty bullish. That doesn't mean we can't have a short-term pullback, but that is pretty important to note. This actually makes me very confident for XRP over the next 12 to 14 months. This definitely makes me feel like we're in a more bullish essence now that on the 3-day chart, we have the 200 moving averages below us. And the last time we saw this setup was January into February of 2021. It was effectively right over here, January into February. Now, I'm going to turn off these moving averages for a second. I'm going to put on the EMAs and we're going to see something else, which is around here. We pierced through the 34 moving average a couple times. Remember, this was the new moon I was talking about us moving into, and then the final full moon correction before we moved up. Look at the 34 EMA. Now we're going to go over to today and we're going to look at where the 34 EMA is. Not only are we trading above it, but it's sitting around 55, 54 cents, and this is going to move up a little bit quicker. I would assume maybe 58 cents, 57 cents around the end of this month, as long as XRP is trading above these levels, which I assume it will be. So both of these align with a price that's slightly below 60 cents. All of these corrections don't last too long, though. So I want you to keep that all in mind because of how volatile XRP is. These corrections don't last too long. 1 second, family. All right, so I'm going to be pulling up a trend line that could be important, and it's right here. You see this blue trend line across the screen that's kicking in about 57, 58 cents, getting closer to 59 by the end of this month. And that would make the most sense on a short-term pullback. We have that being our yearly resistance, more diagonal, but here, touch, breakout, retest, rejection, then getting back above it. Now that we're above it, it would be great to back test it one more time, kind of like we did over here where we got above it, back tested, and then we had our impulse up. Again, we have all of our moving averages aligning right around there, around 57, 58 cents. The 2-day moving average I talked about, 2-day 55 simple, which is this white moving average. I have no idea why this white moving average has sloped down. That seems to be like a little bit of a glitch. Anyways, you get the point. Now the 3-day, the same idea, sloping up. And then we have the 34 exponential, which I was talking about on the 3-day chart, and how that is now getting back above that 55 cent level, and it's heading towards this trend line. Anything around 57 seems to be the next big pullback area for XRP. Let's see how that would go. That'd be about that'd be about 11%. So remember that key horizontal level, take some of these things into consideration, that we have this one level over here, these two yellow trend lines, that's been in play now for 400 days. It would be great to have broken out of that level. And if we zoom out, we can see that this 54-cent level, 55-cent level, if I was to just drag my cursor across the screen, that is a level that's been in play for XRP for 2,000 days. That's 5.5 years. So it's no joke. That 54-cent level is big. And we never really back tested it and confirmed it as a support. I mean, if we want to call that moment, sure, but I think XRP is very immature in its movements, and that's what makes it difficult sometimes to determine what it would do. But needless to say, we're going to quickly run over to the bi-weekly chart, see what's going on with this. It's looking great. We are above all the key moving averages. Above everything. That's looking really solid. Let's look at the weekly. Weekly is looking great. We have RSI above 50, bullish control. It's looking awesome. 55 simple is sloping to the upside. It's great. Let's go over to the daily. All right. So yeah, we have this 55 at the bottom crossing up above the 200 exponential, most likely by today. Once it gets above this 200 symbol moving average, all of these will be in a bullish posture. And there you go. That's a nice bullish setup. But consider around the 58-cent level. That would be where the 34 exponential is getting close to. And that's where we typically like to pull back. So 1 second. All right. Now, I want to consider this. We had this chart over here that I shared. We have been rising up into this prior horizontal support level. It only lasted for a couple days, but that is what we've magnetized back up to, and we've gotten there. Now we're at 64 cents today, slightly below the 0.5 fib. We need to consider 65 cents. So if XRP is going to be closing above 65 cents, it can rally to 70. Now, if we keep closing below 65 cents, it would be clear that it's a resistance, and it would most likely have one sharp pullback before completing its automatic rally. Needless to say, it should complete this 70-cent target before the end of the year. That's been in my analysis now for a long time now. I'm going to stick to that. We already got this first impulse between 80 to 90 cents complete and de-risked before having this larger correction. There was a little bit of an accumulation to follow, and I'm all positioned now. I've been very vocal and transparent with everyone on all my plays on XRP. So now that we're moving up to these 70-cent levels, in the process, the 65-cent level becomes crucial. And that's pretty much what we're dealing with today. So we have to see how the stock market opens up tomorrow, how Bitcoin and everything reacts moving into this next new moon. It's likely that XRP could actually go up to 70 cents within the next week or so, top out, and then come back down to that 55 simple moving average on the 2-day chart, which will be about 58, 57 cents. Okay, so consider that 70 cents, 57 cents, and then it would be primed and ready to repeat what it did back here. Move up, correction down to the 55 simple, maybe a little bit of sideways, and then boom. And then we have that November new moon target on our minds for being back in the high area potentially for XRP if this scenario over here does in fact play out that way. So this is a great time to move over to XLM and see what's been going on with stellar lumens. All right, so we can see on the 2-day chart, impulse, which followed by a back test on the 200 simple moving average on the 2-day. It's pretty clean, so that's looking really nice. I'm gonna go ahead and pull a fib from this level and see what's going on. Remember, we wanna make sure this isn't a linear scale. It is. And we are getting kind of some rejections here at the 236. Now that's not weird because when we look at the yearly fib pull from the swing high down to the swing low, we are also at that 236. So we have two 236 rejections, and this is either starting its process of breaking out and kind of catching up to where XRP is, or it's kind of showing, that it's at a weak point. And I think a lot of the attention is really going to XRP right now. So it's not getting as much of a, dramatic buyback as we've seen on XRP. Okay. Now, one of the things I'm seeing, I need to turn off these moving averages, and we have this major trend line over here. You see this white trend line. We never really back tested the outside of it. So that would have been nice to see. I mean, it would be strange if we were to see one more impulse lower than that, something like this. I don't know if that's the case though. That'd be really interesting. Let me see on the weekly what we got going on here. We'd probably be below moving average. Yeah, we're below the 200. Perfect back test on the weekly 55. Okay, yeah, so that trend line's probably not going to be back tested. And it got its action over here. That was really it. These 3 weekly candles in a row. But we've been back within those levels anyways, so it doesn't really matter. 10 cents. We're only at 12 right now. And if we were to look at where this would be going on an automatic rally, it would be an additional 200% up, like into around 40 cents. So yeah, it's still a lot of opportunity. This thing's discounted, for real. I might pick up a little bit of XLM, but it's not my focus. I'm much more focused on XRP personally, and I don't really feel the need to over diversify. It's just complicating things. But let me get out of all of this and go to a more traditional kind of analysis. Yeah, okay, it's pretty clear to me that the level we're at is a resistance and a support, prior support level. So over here, you can see end of the bull run. When we broke through this level, we started treating it as a resistance before dropping very deep. Then we gravitated back up to it, same level we're at today, rejection. Then after we made our SOS, we back tested it with a backup phase, and then we came right back down to it in the bear market. Tons of rejections at the same level, scooped below, and now that we've broken out above it, we're back below it, testing the same level. So 12 cents is like the equivalent of XRP's 55 cents, if you want to look at it that way. Very similar. That's great. That shows you that it's in a sideways accumulation range. It's not weird at all. It would be amazing to see. Also, I feel like this essence over here is kind of what we're in right now with XLM, kind of the final moments before blast off. And I've shared this too, that I feel that March into April for 2024 is going to be really powerful for XRP. So I'm going to leave it at that with stellar lumens unless I find anything really quickly. Look at the daily chart. Maybe I could get something on these weekly or daily moving averages. So we have some moving average action around 11 cents flat. We got the 200 simple, 200 exponential, and the 55. We got a wolf cross, so that's really positive. But back testing this 55 would be ideal. I would assume if we get a pullback short term on XRP, that would be the level that you come back to on XLM. So 11 cents would be a solid accumulation level. I mean, it's not that much down. It's only about 8-9% correction, which is nothing for crypto. So keep that in mind. Okay, we're moving over to Polkadot. All right. So DOT did end up even going lower in October. Wow. Just lower high after lower high over and over and over again. And it broke back to the same lows as it went on launch. So I remember when Polkadot went live, then it went down to this corrective target. Like if I show you what it looks like, look over here, the launch correction, little backup phase before just blast off. We came right back down to that level. So that's probably about as low as it gets on Polkadot, unless this thing really starts to suffer. Like we'll know that if Bitcoin got any correction and we see this thing start breaking below $3.60, it's really weak. Because if we look at it based on prior all-time high to where it's trading today, it's 90% down. Like Bitcoin right now is trading all the way up here. It would be like, yeah, this thing's up 32% from the lows, and Bitcoin is up 120% from the lows. So this is not looking so great right now. Also, a lot of altcoins have started to break out and look a little bit more on the positive side, like Chainlink has started to get back into recovery vibes. We saw Solana on another breakout, more in the recovery vibes, whilst this is just lower low after lower low. So yeah, not super positive off the bat with this sort of thing. I am seeing a trend line that could be in play though. Yeah, there it is. So you see from over here, we got a lot of action. I know it looks like a little, but believe it or not, all of this was about a month straight of rejections, sell off, rejection, sell off, rejection, sell off, lower high after lower high, lower high after lower high. And now we're gravitating back into this trend line. So maybe we come back one more time, hold that red line, back test, and then we have a breakout. Getting back above that 236 would be ideal on dot. Yeah, you want to make sure that's fib based. Wow. So we need to extend that down another leg lower. And this makes your next level here kind of your target. So consider that anything above this would be more bullish confirmation. Anything below is accumulation territory, but the fact that it's just making lower high after lower high going on now for 470 days, that doesn't make me confident. It doesn't make me want to pull out my wallet and start buying this stuff. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, be cautious with this kind of vibe. But this is typically the time things like to turn around, between the second and the third solar eclipse in a solar cycle. We're going to be moving on to Zilliqa. Okay, Zil had this short-term firmament dome, would definitely seem like a short-term breakout, but I'm going to go ahead and delete that because that was just short-term analysis, having some fun. Same sort of deal over here, just having some fun. Triple bottom vibes. Triple bottom, definitely a more bullish setup, but can't be confirmed when you say that kind of stuff in crypto land because crypto has its own rules. Now, we do have something like this. You see this? All-time high, rejection, final rejection. This was your C19 V-shaped recovery, and then we just kept it going after that. So that could be kind of what we have here. I don't want to count this move over here. That was very, very isolated to specifically Zilliqa. It had stuff to do with the metaverse, and long story short, I wouldn't count that. But we have here rejection, and then we rode that until we finally started getting to the outside of it. Now it'd be interesting now if we're in this process of recovery, but we can't really confirm that until we get back above 0.24 into 0 right here, 0.36. Let me turn that a different color. Let's go to yellow. All right. So there it is. You know, really anything below this red trend line at 0.24 is accumulation territory. All of this is accumulation territory. And Zilliqa tends to do these really wild moves too. Like we see off the C19 move. This thing was up almost 1,000%, 800% in 80 days off of the C19 crash. So this thing, when it wants to move, it can move. Over here, you can see it moved up 500% in a month. So pretty wacky. But yeah, just consider this level right there of 0.24 and down to the current lows. This is all sort of an accumulation at the prior backup phase. You know, the prior backup phase. Anything below 2 cents is ideal. I'd say the same thing probably on VeChain too. So yeah, I'm going to leave it at that on Zil. It's very simple analysis at this time because we just have a continuation of a sell-off, lower highs, holding structure, do kind of have this triple bottom. Maybe you just want to call it a double bottom. And back into this backup phase, you have that same area back here was the same exact area that we came down to. So that's more of a confident level for accumulations. And overall on the year, down a total of 94%, currently down 92%. Consider this kind of stuff. These are very speculative assets. You want to be going into it more with venture capital, not anything much more than a 5% position. Keep it between 2 to 5% maximum, and then you won't feel the pain when we're in a more bearish energy. Definitely stuff that you wouldn't mind throwing some extra money into during a bull cycle recovery, that's more like after the Bitcoin halving, where you have some time to go. WorldCoin. Okay, it's been a minute since I've looked at this. We were riding on the outside of this, never quite made it down to the 1618, but it was almost impossible to pull a fib anyways because we have such limited chart data. So this will probably be the last time I cover this, okay? Until I want a year of chart data when I look at a chart. I know this is like a phenomenon right now, it got a lot of votes, but I'm not going to be covering this one for a while. So take this analysis and consider it for the long term. So I would like to now shift this to a horizontal level because I always do my analysis with horizontal levels. And we have up here, this is your range, and this is your heart line, what we're trading within. I'm going to pull a fib. We're going to go linear right now. It is. And that was amazing. So you could see the 236 is literally perfectly at where I had my horizontal line pulled. Effectively anything below this level is the bottom side of accumulation, and then getting back above it, you have thin air because there was no daily closes outside of this area right here. So you have your current daily close low, you have your current daily close high. This is literally like a TA lesson right now, everyone. Now we have a key horizontal level of the middle of it all, which is your heart line. You can see holding a little bit, broke, rejection, came back lower, held it for a little bit, got back above it, a couple of tests, and now things are looking kind of bullish. In the short term, I'll put this tiny little line. This could be effective if we were to break below this. We could have something that just happened with Bitcoin where we go like this, come below to this red line, back up to this white line and get rejected. It has this kind of look. You know, like an inverse head and shoulders play. Just something to consider. This is where a lot of the trading territory is at your support, but I want you to consider that we only have 30 days there. So this thing could be going much, 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 much lower if it wanted to go below $1. It doesn't surprise me that it stopped out at $1 though, because that's a psychological level. So we've effectively made it up almost 100% since, but I highly doubt anyone was taking advantage of this because the style of this sell-off is very elusive in the way it turns around. But we know that this is the main range between $1 and $2.40. That's the main range. We're chopping now in this, and we're still lower than all of these launch highs. So you want to think this was the day it launched. Not a lot of value there, but chopping around it and then on a perpetual sell-off from that day going on about a month or so, that doesn't tell me that that's a bottom. This is still an infant. So yeah, you want to keep this 140 level in mind. And one thing I'm going to do right now is I'm going to pull a reverse fib from the current low to this current high. Yep, exactly. So this is really short-term analysis, but I pulled a fib in reverse, bearish fib, from the current low on this heart line up to the current high. And you could see the 1618, the golden ratio, is right there at the red line. So no matter how I cut it, you know, that's still your range. It confirms tops, it confirms bottoms. I would suspect that this is your lows, and we could absolutely retest that area for sure. As quick as it moves up is as quick as it can move down. So I'm going to leave it at that, family. We'll retouch on WorldCoin maybe sometime in the summer of next year, unless there's been some major developments. I don't really care to spend too much time analyzing charts that I don't have too much data for. It's really difficult. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's podcast. I know it was a little longer than usual, but I wanted to fill this with as much value as possible, given the circumstances of the timing of everything. And we have a very important 2 months ahead of us. So from now on, we're just going to keep using this particular podcast to reference over the next couple months and refine, and any buys or selling that I'll be doing personally, I will be updating you over on the Discord. And with that being said, I appreciate every single one of you, wishing you all an amazing rest of your weekend. Much love.